Okay, I think we're ready for our next session. All right, I have to say, I'm still recovering from the previous session. Like, shout out to Ayati and Mari. Like, when I was their age, I think, coloring or playing with Barbies. I was not like this self-assured and building queendoms. So I just love what they represent because we are in this era of change and there's so much work that we still have to do. And working in DEI, I feel that angst every day, but I am so encouraged by this next generation. Like, amazing. So thank y'all again. With that said, I have the distinct pleasure of welcoming to the stage Maria Weaver, who is president of WMX, which is part of Warner Music Group. We're gonna play a short video about Maria, and then her and I are gonna have hopefully a thought-provoking, I know it will be thought-provoking and exciting fireside chat together. Cue video.
I don't know that I could have worked someplace that was, let's just do it the way we've always done it. I thrive in an environment where we want to actually be a disruptor and change the status quo. And I would define my career by that. I'm Maria Weaver, president of WMX at the Warner Music Group. I'm doing the unexpected by leading people through change and transformation. I grew up in New York City on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. I spent a lot of time in the arts community, whether it be dance, music, theater. Music, though, was always really important for me. In New York during that time, music was so influential. There was hip hop, there was punk, all different types of music happening. And I spent a lot of time going to clubs, roller skating, loved to roller skate. My family life was definitely so influential. My dad was such a strong force. And even though he passed away when I was still so young, my dad is the great-grandson of Frederick Douglass. And so I also knew the family history of what it meant to be a descendant of a Douglass. He was 30 years older than my mom. He had 3 children. My mom, when they got married, she had 3 children. So I always say we were the original Brady Bunch. Being able, when you're 8 years old, to already see your siblings pursuing their careers and pursuing their passions. When you're very young, it alters how you think about your own career and your own growth. I quickly learned that the pursuit of passion was above all and paramount for myself.
Maria is a person that's never afraid to try something different, never afraid to do the unexpected, to do the unconventional.
I started acting when I was about 7 years old and then continued on as an actor for many, many years, acting, dancing, and I went to college as a theater major because that's just what I thought was the natural progression, but I just wasn't as into it. And I knew at that point it was really time for me to make a change. I started working for a company called Rainbow, which was the ad sales division of Cablevision. I like to say that cable was the first disruptor. Before there was digital and the internet, cable was disrupting broadcast television, and nobody really understood this box with all these channels and what it could mean and how that was going to influence culture. And working in that during that time, which was in the late 1980s, early 1990s, was a very exciting time. I mean, we were really changing the way people consumed television. And I was around people like myself who wanted to be doing something different. As the president of WMX, I think about the impact that my division can have on these musical artists in such a different way. What we're doing is not really touching their music, it's touching all the other aspects of their business. If we can actually help them have sustainable wealth or improve their opportunities beyond music, we could really have an impact on their lives, which is very different than I think anyone has approached this role before.
I feel like this job that she currently has is a beautiful convergence of the business and the creative and the artistic, and she's able to really bring all of those skills to play. And in a space where she's creating opportunity for others, for other women, for other people of color, and really looking to innovate in this music space, which as an industry is and has been in much need of continued innovation.
When I worked at Rainbow, it was a fairly male-dominated environment. There were very, very few women, and certainly not many people of color. But there was this one woman there, and she was so influential to me. And not so much about what she said, but how she carried herself. She just had this way of being so direct and being unwavering. That has influenced my leadership.
We look at leaders who are out of our reach, and those are the people that we call our heroes. But so often we're walking among our heroes. Our heroes are in our life. They're touching us every day. And so she's one of those people for me.
I think when a woman, especially a woman of color, is given an opportunity to be in a position that has tremendous influence, I think we have to approach it with great responsibility. It's really important for other young women to be able to look up the ranks and see a woman of having influence, guiding them, shaping the business that they're a part of. And maybe part of that is because I have two daughters, and so I know what it is for them to have that experience. But it's also really important for young men to see women in these roles. A lot of them are raising young girls. And to be women, we need to change their perception sometimes of what that will look like for the children that they're raising.
She's beloved by her team. They appreciate not only how brilliant she is, how motivated and inspiring she is, but just that she becomes a mentor, she becomes a sponsor for the people on her team. She looks to really pull up those behind her, alongside her, as she ascends in her journey.
How do I break the role? The truth is, I try to break every role that I'm in. When I think about the roles that I'm in a professional environment, I'm always trying to do them above and beyond what has been done before. When I'm in a role where there's a predecessor, where there's someone that I could possibly be compared to, it's really important to me that I create a name for myself in that role. And whether that be pursuing a project or something that might seem harder than what someone else might want to do, or whether that be just really looking at how can this role actually have impact on the business, and how can this role have impact perhaps in the industry. That's how I think about it. When I leave a company, I hope that I leave it having left a mark, and someone can say, oh, Maria Weaver was a part of that, or Maria Weaver led that, or Maria Weaver created that. That is, to me, so important that you create something that lives on without you. I'm honored to be a part of World Women Hour.
Amazing. With that, and on behalf of the World Women Foundation, we are elated to present this year's World Women honoree to Maria Weaver. Thank you, I guess. Join me over here.
Not easy to watch yourself.
Right. I know the feeling.
Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, our pleasure. Can you guys hear me okay? There we go. There it is. Okay, let me put this down. I've been so excited to talk to you.
Thank you
for
too.
being here. You talked about being one of kind of a few women at Rainbow, and now you're the first woman to helm WMX. Tell us why representation of women and women of color is so important, especially in leadership roles in the industry.
Well, I mean, I definitely touched upon it in the video. I mean, I think it's important for there to be representation for lots of reasons, right? And representation of women, of different racial and cultural backgrounds, right? Just representation across the board, because most businesses are operating and serving consumers across a wide breadth of people. And if the people that are making the decisions aren't representative, then we all know we've seen that play out. And so for that purpose, just from a business perspective, it makes absolute sense. But I think for me, it's also important for people as they come into a company to be able to look up the ranks and be able to see diversity of thought. I think it's important for young people. I do think about my children a lot, and so I think I'm the first, for sure, the first person of color that has been at the helm. But I am also the first woman, and I don't know that I thought about it when I took the role, or even knew that for a bit, and so I didn't lead with that. But once I understood it, it actually became even more important for me.
Yeah, I love that. In your opinion, what are some of the stereotypes? And I should preface this is like a multi-pronged question. What are some of the most harmful stereotypes that you think women face today? And how do you see those playing out or impacting women personally and professionally? And then we'll kind of talk about what you think can be done to challenge those.
Oh my goodness, there are so
many. Where
many.
do we start?
I think we all know some of the ones that people speak about the most, right? Women being aggressive if they speak a certain way, or how a woman is supposed to show up in a space. But I think there are also a lot of subtle ones that aren't talked about as much, right? Like as far as how a woman dresses, and whether or not someone thinks a certain outfit is appropriate or not appropriate in the office. Hairstyles. My dear friend AC Eggleston Bracey leads the Crown Act, and which is about women being able to wear their hair naturally without any kind of repercussions. The fact that we have to legislate for that, for women to be able to wear their hair any way they want. Like, take that in, yes. Right? We're in 2023, and there's a person and a team behind her that's what they focus on, right? So, the stereotypes are they abound. I think, so if a woman does wear her hair a certain way, what stereotypes are coming along with that? What perceptions are coming along with that? I have the benefit, and I don't take it for granted, that I work in an industry that embraces creativity. So I do recognize that the stereotypes are probably a bit different at Warner Music Group than they were even at Comcast, truthfully. And so I like being in a space, in a place where authenticity is actually embraced, encouraged. We want everyone to show up with their true selves. But I think it's important in all companies that people find their ability to do that, and that's how we'll start to break the stereotypes, by women actually just doing it.
Just being authentic.
Just being authentic.
I love that. I love that you not only called out the behavioral stereotypes, but even how we're policed in our appearance, and how that you can change people's perception. And that's something that I've dealt with in my career. Like, do you straighten your hair? Can you wear your braids? Are you seen as professional or not? So I love that women like you and I are just being authentic, and that helps to open it up for other women. So that's amazing.
That's right.
How can we encourage more women to pursue leadership roles and break down the barriers that have kind of historically prevented us from being in those seats of power?
Well, one of the things that I'm really encouraged by, I have been in the industry for a really long time, or in media and in this space for a really long time. And, when I was first coming up, it was really like crabs in a barrel, right? Women didn't really support women. There was going to be one woman at the top. And I remember one of my girlfriends had a woman say to her, "Don't get in my way, because I'm going to be the person at the top." And so that's not the case now. Like, women do really support one another. And I think that has such an impact. When I think about how we can evolve and grow in the business sector, I do think about us really coming together more and more, and being an ability to showcase for young people, and really kind of be that voice.
I love that, and I know that you also role model by being a mentor and bringing up others behind you. So that's also a way that you're breaking those barriers. A follow-on question: what can businesses, governments, and other organizations do to promote more gender equality and support women in leadership? So I think it's one thing to, for us as individual women to help each other, but of course there are structural, systemic things in place. So what can those structures, those institutions do more to help with this?
Well, I just mentioned the Crown Act a minute ago. I think in many ways it's on us to bring some of that forward. Like, I don't necessarily know that it's always obvious what those structures are that are holding us back. And so I think the more that we are able to bring them forward and highlight and create awareness, I think is really what's important. When I think about the, kind of corporate structure, right? We have to be realistic about what is happening and playing out in those corporate environments, right? There are board of directors, if it's a public company, there are stockholders, there's all kinds of aspects to the business that are create some level, oftentimes, of structural limitations. And I don't know that CEOs necessarily always see it, right? And so I think it's on us to kind of bring forth some of that. In the case of advocacy, and in the case of kind of government and political, once again, I think it's kind of the same thing, right? It's really about finding those scenarios that really could use an advocate and have advocacy. Everything that was just on this previous panel, as you said, was so inspiring, right? Like, at 10 years old, I was absolutely, if I had half that gumption, I can't even imagine what I would be doing right now.
Right.
Right? Like,
Absolutely.
And so some of the limitations are limitations we put on ourselves. Mm-hmm. There are limitations we put on our children. There are limitations that we've created, and I think that we have an opportunity, right, to kind of break those barriers, to have those dialogues. And I do think the young people are going to be the ones leading the way. They are
fierce.
So they are light years ahead of
Yes.
of where we were, and not scared. They are fearless.
Yes.
And I'm super encouraged by that. I'm just super encouraged by the kind of the pathway that they can lead ahead of us. And hopefully that will help change some of these structural scenarios that we may not benefit from. We'll be able to cheer them on and be a part of it in that way.
That's such a great point, Maria, to help call out where those barriers. One of my favorite quotes, and I'm not even sure where I heard this from, but I heard it recently. The person said, instead of calling out, to call in. And I love that because it is something that we have to do together. And I think having folks that are in these seats of power, like the CEOs, like the folks, a lot of times they underestimate the barriers. So calling them in to help fix the problem, I think is brilliant. So thank you for highlighting that.
I'll just add one other thing.
Please.
The moment I think we all, a moment in time that I think we, especially as Black women, know was after George Floyd, there was this increase of hiring of mostly women of color, but men and women of color, right?
That's how my job came to be, by the way.
Well, there you have it.
Instagram.
Right, but there's so many people found opportunities that they had been blocked from in the past.
Yes.
All of a sudden, these doors opened up. But what I also found was there wasn't a process or a way of helping them acclimate, right? I don't want to make it seem like I wasn't a part of that. I think that actually goes back to those systemic challenges, though, right? Like there's not really a process in a way. You take someone who's a senior level person. It's very different when they're more entry level. Become a part of the ERG and different things. But when you're an SVP or a senior level person and you're the only in a room, and there's not really a mechanism to give you support, and then you don't succeed, there's what I'm seeing now is a lot of companies like, oh, well, we tried.
Yes, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
And then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And because that person was the only one, then when they're gone, now we're back to where we were. And we're seeing it. We're in that phase right now. It's about 2 years, and it's like it's right in that moment. And I'm really concerned about it. And I do think that's an area of like advocacy and having those conversations and making sure that companies see where they're failing people versus that the people are failing, but their processes and their inability to support is actually what's failing.
Maria's preaching a word today here, okay? No, very, very true. Yes, very, very true. There's accountability for sure on the companies to do more to help people be successful and acclimate. I love that. Can you share a time when you faced a particularly difficult challenge, how you overcame that, and what lessons you learned? And I'm sure there are many, so any that you care to share?
Well, I'm new to the music industry, so I'm probably living my biggest challenge right now. Truthfully, career change at my age. But the one I'll share is about 20 years ago when I had my second child, and a senior leader at the time, this is pre-technology, said to me, basically, you can't really have a career and be a good mom. Like you're gonna have to choose one or the other. And at the time, for me, I chose to step aside. I was on a fast trajectory at HBO. I was doing really well. It was definitely not an easy decision, but I chose to step aside and basically become a stay-at-home mom and pursue some other film stuff that I was interested in. But that actually wasn't the biggest challenge. The biggest challenge was coming back in. So I came back in about 4.5 years later. My daughter was going to be a kindergartner. And the world had it was on fire as far as I was concerned. Like people were texting and emailing. I mean, it was like I am or AIM, and I felt like I had been gone for like a decade. I didn't know what was happening. And I had to really decide to come up with a way to deal with it. And so I hired myself a personal coach. And we set out on a plan for how I would, because, when I came back in, I actually took a step backward, right? Like coming back in, all those things happen. And I took a step backward, and I wanted to get my career back where it was. And now technology was a whole new thing. Now I could take
my work home, I wouldn't have had to quit, actually, right? I would have been
You
able
could've
to
taken the
figure it out. I could have taken my
laptop,
laptop.
made the dinner.
Right. That was like not an option. And so that was a real challenge. I think, people underestimate those of us who started 30 years ago or so have lived through the craziness. I mean, literally, right? From the technology to social media to like all of that has happened in our career. And we've had to adjust constantly, right? Figuring it out along the way. Some making, mistakes along the way, not really understanding personal brand and social media. Like that wasn't a thing. And we've had to live it and figure it out. And at the same time, teach and mentor and help other people. And so that, was definitely a challenge. But I'm happy with how it's all turned out. So
Clearly, it's turned out well. And I love that yes, please, let's celebrate that. What I love about your example, Maria, is that you took the onus to get a coach. Like you saw the challenge and like, let me continue to prepare myself because you didn't want the career or the challenge to pass you by. So what a great example. I have one more question for you, if I may. Finally, what message or advice would you like to share with young women worldwide who are watching this program or sitting in the audience to be a top executive like yourself? But we know that there will undoubtedly be obstacles that they face. So what advice would you give them for those challenges that will stand in their way?
Well, I think we have to remember there's challenges in everything, right? From the time you're young all the way up, right? Our first challenge is learning how to walk or whatever, right? And so I think if we treat it in that way, then you don't feel like the challenge is just because I'm a woman, right? It's a challenge, and you can approach it that way. There's a very wise woman. I won't say her name, but senior level woman who known and well respected in the Black community, and I had the opportunity to ask her when I was very young, what was the secret of her success. And I remember she said to me, I focus on the work. I don't worry about the accolades. I don't worry about other people's opinion. I am committed to outworking them all. And that has stayed with me. And that has become my mantra. I focus on the work. And that's what I would say to all young people. Like, do your very best. Have like the work ethic like no one else. Make sure no one can outwork you. Like you're going to do it to the nth degree. And if you focus on that, if you focus on just like people have asked me, how do you have, big job, right? How do you sleep at night? I say, I sleep very well every night. Because I know that I've done all I can do in that day. And that's what I tell my daughters. As long as you've tried your very best, and that's what I would tell young people. And I would say also, don't be scared of leadership and leadership roles. Because what's beautiful about now, and this was a part I meant to say in my previous answer, what's beautiful about now is that women show up in all different types of styles when it comes to management.
Yes.
Right? You don't have to be angry. You don't have to be all those other stereotypes, right? You don't have to be Devil Wears Prada. You can actually be empathetic. You can actually, give a hug to a colleague if they need a hug. You can lead in all different types of ways. And so the beauty of that is you can actually truly be authentic. You don't have to try to model something that feels out of character for who you are. You can actually find a way to lead based upon what's important to you. And so I pray and I hope that we see more like the young women we saw on this panel a little bit ago, leading the way and aspiring to be leaders. Because if we end up where all the men are running the companies again, that would not be a good thing. So we can't let that happen.
Yeah. So, and that just seems, that's what a wonderful way to end, because that's a recurring theme we heard from the earlier panel of finding a way to be authentic and authentically feminine, which I think is beautiful, because we do bring such a different perspective, a different lived experience, and a different style and a way that we move as leaders. So thank you for that, and thank you for being a wonderful example of an authentic leader.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
All right.